Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Woodburn's Thrive in China Roundtable. It's Wednesday again, 1 p.m. Central European Time, 7 p.m. China time. We are ready to get cracking on another topic for this week's Roundtable. Before we start off, as I normally do, there is always about 5 to 10 new registrants per week, which is absolutely fantastic. For those of you that are new to this roundtable, it would be wonderful to understand a little bit your background. Are you newbies to China? Are you startups in China? Are you experienced China hands? If you are watching this live, it would be great if you could just add that into the chat box to give us a little bit of insight. For those of you that are watching this on replay, don't hesitate to reach out to us. My colleague Joe is also going to reach out to you to get insight on your background in the next couple of months so that we have a more understanding also for the 2024 lineup to see who's going to stay on within the community and also tailor make then our presentations and depending on who's actually coming. For those of you, again, who don't know me, my name's Christina Kohler-Colucci. I'm the head of business advisory at Woodburn Accountants and Advisors. I'm a leading expert on inbound investment to China. I have over 20 years of experience in the corporate services and compliance realm associated with China. But just as a reference, our head office is based in Hong Kong, and we have our subsidiary in China. We cater to two jurisdictions, Hong Kong and China. My expertise is in China. If you are interested in Hong Kong, though, happy to guide you to the right person within the organization or start off that conversation if I can give assistance. I've worked now with over 750 international companies across a whole variety of industries and sectors on their entry or their inbound investment into the Chinese market. It's been a journey with each of them, all the way from pre-investment advisory to understanding what business model would suit them, to validating strategies and budgets, to actually then implementing structures, and then helping and securing that they grow and scale in the market as well. Of course, all of this from the mindset of corporate administration, corporate compliance, corporate governance, and making sure that that company has a solid foundation within the market. If you are interested in our services and in what we do, head on over to our website. It's woodburnglobal.com. You'll find the full listing of services there, but you'll also find additional free resources in the form of our short articles, ebooks, industry guides, etc. You'll also find the links to our podcasts. But for anybody that is in the Thrive in China community, we are offering you a free copy of our ebook, The 10 Biggest Mistakes Companies Make in China. So don't hesitate to email me if you would like to receive that copy. You can email me at christina@woodburnglobal.com. Now, we have hit roundtable number 24 in 2023. The topic for today is, why is a Chinese account vital for your China business? The story behind why I've come up with this topic is the fact that when a company comes to China, implements their structure, and starts transacting, they are already way behind if they don't have that resource available to them in creating a sound foundation for their finance side of the business. I want to highlight, not only from my own personal experience, but also from the experience of my clients who have then approached me to help them with the finance aspects of their business, is what are the pain points of a Chinese account to a foreign investor in the Chinese market? The pain points can be the following. One, a lack of transparency, meaning that you receive your financial management reports and you just don't understand them. The reason why you don't have transparency is probably because as a foreign investor, you have a lack of understanding and potentially language capabilities with that accountant, meaning that accountant's English is not enough for you to grasp the finance concepts But also potentially this Chinese accountant is not educating you on what you need to understand and be able to read your financial management reports, or in order to be able to understand why certain transactions have to happen in certain ways. Now, when people are realizing that they don't understand their financial management reports, when they ask questions to their accountant, they're not getting any responses, it really does lead to a lack of communication, meaning that you just can't be bothered to communicate with your Chinese accountant. Now, I will openly say that in whatever accounting industry you look at, in whatever jurisdiction around the world, accountants tend to be very reactive individuals, right? They are not sociable. They are going to sit there and wait for you to come to them with questions. It's very rare to find proactive accountants who are going to give you advice and guide you along the route you should be going on. So you have to understand that communication is anyway going to be difficult because of just the personalities of these types of individuals. And that really has to come from you then instigating this level of communication. Now, also what I want people to realize is that the cost of accountants has risen in China, particularly if you are located in the tier 1, even in the tier 2 cities. The salary of a Chinese accountant, even if you outsource those functions to outsource providers, it has become more expensive. And the philosophy of a lot of foreign investors is that administration roles should be cheap. And what they don't understand is why are they spending more money, but on less quality compared to their own home jurisdiction. Okay, so I want you all to really understand that the finance world in China is still, number one, complex compared to Western jurisdictions. 2, there are a lot more intricacies involved with tax bureaus, banks, state administrations of foreign exchange, auditors. I mean, there's a whole ecosystem just in the finance realm that has to be maintained. And we're not even talking about payroll yet. I mean, you have to then think about labor bureaus, again, also tax bureaus, and all of that aspect, making it complex. In addition to that, because the accounting system is so different and the ERP systems are different and trade transactions are just run differently, there's a component of educating the HQ about all of these intricacies and complexities. And if you don't have the right people on the ground to educate you on that, of course, you're not going to have transparency and clarity. You're not going to understand or read your management reports. So we're going to try and change that today. I want people to understand that accountants are not cheap in China. Anyone who's in an administrative role that has a good 15 to 20 years of experience is not going to be cheap. Even when you outsource to accounting firms, whatever level, you're going to find that they are expensive. But the whole point of this presentation is to highlight to you, why is this role important? What should their jobs be on a day-to-day basis, right? I want you to realize what their job responsibility is and what your responsibility is with them, okay? So that we can eliminate some of these pain points that people face. Now, as a leader in China, I want to understand from people, how much value do you place in your finance team? And I mean local finance team, not your HQ finance team. How much value do you place in your finance team? When I started off in China, I placed 0 value in them because their role was just to do compliance work. My role was to discuss with HQ, overall picture, how things were functioning. I made an error in my own judgment in doing that. And it cost me. It cost me in not understanding my business, or not understanding VAT systems, not understanding payroll breakdowns. It led to a lot of disagreements because I was comparing a lot with Hong Kong, which is where our head office was located. And I wasn't communicating. And can you imagine? I wasn't even communicating. The person was sitting next to me. I was treating them like my right-hand person, but not asking the questions. And unfortunately, the first person I hired was reactive, waiting for me to do the questions. But quite frankly, my knowledge level was so minimal, I didn't even know what questions to ask. All right. So I totally undervalued the role of this individual and what they should be doing for our organization. Okay. Now, let's start off with what should a Chinese account do for you? And I have split this out into the 3 different phases that hopefully your company in China will go through in terms of startup, scaling, and ultimate growth. Okay. So what should their job responsibilities be? So in the startup process, you should already have an accountant on hand who is helping you to determine the best business structure for your situation. Now, you might be wondering why. Well, the business structure determines then what finance status, tax status, bank status you're going to have. You need to be educated on the running of a business, and that needs to be done by an accountant to explain that to you so that you can understand what business structure suits you best. What structure is going to help you do the best trade transactions? All right. Now, in that discussion, you also need to emphasize what are your commitment levels, what are your risk levels, how much capital do you have to invest, etc. That Chinese accountant should also be helping you to create your business plan and business budget. They should be helping in the analytical work. Now, some of you might say, well, no, my HQ is going to do that. And that's where mistakes happen. Your HQ staff are not specialized in Chinese tax systems, Chinese trade transactions. You need to have a counterpart validate that. In addition to that, this person should also be advising you on the right accounting software that you need. And I say this at this point in time because it can take months to implement software systems. We are right now implementing SAP for a client, and it's become painful. All right. We started the process in June. We are still in September, and we're not even 1 month. We've not even been able to put 1 month's worth of data into the SAP system because there are constant bugs and updates that need to happen that fit with the Chinese accounting standards. And we're talking about SAP. Okay. Obviously, there are accounting software systems that can be set up overnight, but do your research. It depends what size of business you're going to have. What is your budget for that software? Do you want to use the same system that you have in your HQ? It's also understanding how your financial management reports should look like. I was advising a client on this aspect, and there was so much miscommunication, and I couldn't stem from where it was happening. And we realized that they just wanted to replicate the system they had in Ireland. And I said, you can't have the same charts of accounts. And they were like, of course we can have the same charts of accounts. I said, no, the numbering for the charts of accounts is different. There are rules in China to the numbering, and you need to be able to map it out from system to system. This is the whole educational aspect. Okay. In addition to that, you need to already start doing your homework in the startup process about what bank you want to operate in. And in theory, you also need to then analyze who is going to be operating that bank account. Is it going to be the accountant in China? And when I say accountant, you can use an outsourced provider. You can hire somebody in-house. Actually, for me, it's the same, as long as you are vetting both, right? And if you choose an outsourced provider, this is the type of work they should be doing as part of the startup phase, right? Is telling you what bank accounts would they recommend? Why would they recommend them? What are the pros or cons? And not just from a macroeconomic perspective, but from a day-to-day operational aspect, you need to know what the limitations are and understand who's going to operate what. You've also got to make sure that your accounting procedures comply with government regulations and requirements. Understand what those accounting procedures are, understand the FAPIAO system, understand what documents need to be submitted, etc. Okay. You also need to set up a system on how to track expenses, not just, office expenses, but your operational staff expenses. Who is going to approve what? Are you going to have an app? How are you going to implement all of that? And then, of course, you've got to decide, depending on who you are as an investor, are you an entrepreneur setting up in China? If you are an entrepreneur, it's understanding that your personal expenses should not be together with your business expenses. It's best to separate that. This is what your accountants should be doing. Now, I highlight this because I do want to highlight a case study for you. There was an F&B company in Shanghai, entrepreneur, a foreigner, coming in, setting up his business, running extremely well, expanding into other cities. And he then gets approached by a potential investor to buy him out. Super interesting, right? I mean, great investor, huge potential for the business, great money for him in order to sell the business, but also to retain a role within the business. And investors go in and do their due diligence, obviously, right? From the surface, they can see a company that's growing, expanding, etc. But they're going to go in and look at your financials to see if that is the real reality. What are they buying into? Now, what did this investor discover? One, that the wife was doing the accounts in Excel. Okay. Personal expenses had been booked into the company expenses. Three, they could not read the financial management reports. There was no breakdown. Revenue was one revenue item. And when they said, actually, no, we want to look at the revenue per branch, we want to look at this, there was no analytical data provided. Why? Because the wife was just plugging numbers and that was it. Only doing the minimal to remain compliant according to Chinese government requirements. In the end, the investor backed out. They could not evaluate the business. It would have meant that the owner, the entrepreneur, would have had to redo about 4 years worth of accounts in order for them to fully understand the business. It was a loss. Okay. Now, at that point of the startup phase, you are now going into regular business operations. Okay. And your outsourced accountant or your in-house accountant needs to ensure that your independent contractors are classified as such, that they're not classified as employees, that they're classified as independent contractors. They also need to make sure that VAT sales invoices, VAT payables, VAT, all the VAT aspects in terms of original documentation is being received. They are actually following up with suppliers, and they are obviously going to issue the VAT invoices to customers. They are there not only to produce the financial management reports, but they are also there to educate you and explain the financial management reports so that you can understand every single line item within the business. You can also compare your financial statements to your budget and understand where you might be overspending, underspending, or why revenue isn't being achieved as predicted. They're also going to oversee payroll and payment processes. You don't need to hire a separate individual to just do payroll. That person will have payroll experience to be able to create the payroll breakdowns per employee, handle the various payments that have to be made, and then also explain to the existing staff why the payroll is calculated in a certain way. They should also be providing advice on estimated tax payments. What can we expect to pay every quarter period, and do we have enough cash in the business to be able to pay that? Then obviously they're compiling the year-end financial management reports, organizing auditors, compiling all the paperwork and vouchering systems that have to be created, right? The regulation in China is you've got to keep 5 years worth of accounts before starting to throw things out. So they're creating that internal physical paper system within your organization. And then comes the growth stage, right? Ultimately, you want this person to guide you on scaling and growing your business, meaning that they're going to have an analytical function. right? They need to provide you insight on cash flow patterns. Do you have cash flow? Is your cash flow seasonal? What do you have to watch out for? Do you need more investment capital? They should be looking at inventory management. Are inventories in and out recorded? Can you analyze the margins on your products? Are you looking at pricing? Do you need to increase pricing, decrease pricing? What suggestions are coming from them in terms of that? All right. They need to advise you on whether it makes sense to purchase property, equipment leasing. What are the better options? Do you need to move into bigger office space? Are there better districts to move into because the tax bureaus are going to be more lenient? We have a case like that right now, where we are pushing, even though the client has their own finance manager, we as the outsourced bookkeepers are advising the clients that there's so much problem with the tax office, and this is in Fengshan in Shanghai, Fengshan district, because they're not used to having foreign investors locate in their district. They don't know how to manage them, and they're causing a lot of trouble. In addition to that, they have to help you avoid getting tax audited. Right? They need to make sure that you are completely compliant in all aspects so that you don't have the tax bureau come in and audit your business, which is actually happening to our client in Fengshan because there's not been enough communication between the finance manager and the tax officer. You also need to prepare and guide you through just a general audit, right? Can you work with a local CPA firm, or is it better to work with a more internationally recognized CPA firm? You need them to also create financial forecasts so that you can make better decisions on whether you have to pivot your business or not. You've got to actually create business budgets, update those business budgets and your business goals, right? Those two come hand in hand. You've also got to look at whether this person also has to look and analyze whether you have enough resources available, or are the staff not achieving targets? When you are starting up small, this person should also be responsible for controlling KPIs of your salespeople. Are they achieving those sales? There's going to be so many multiple functions in relation to numbers that this person needs to manage. Okay. So it's a heavy job. All right. And people are undervaluing all of this that has to happen, with the assumption that we have minimal transactions, Christina, so we don't need somebody so professional. I'm not saying you need somebody professional. That's why I say start outsourced. But you do need this analytical work to be done from the beginning. So we do have clients where we really recommend to them to outsource initially, but at that moment in time, don't hire a finance manager. Hire someone who can analyze. A financial analyst is a very different job experience compared to just doing bookkeeping, etc. Okay. My financial analyst in my organization is my right-hand person. It's somebody who I speak to on a daily basis, who gives me insight into the business where I have to make decisions on a daily basis. They're analyzing my business from top to bottom, left to right, right to left, bottom to top, all aspects, to make sure that we are stable, that we have enough cash, and that we can grow. So it's a heavy job, guys, right? And obviously at the beginning, you only have one person do that. Okay. Now, what I want people to realize, and these three items were actually for me the key aspect, is what should a Chinese accountant do for me and do for my business? The first thing they need to do is save my time and energy. Okay. They need to be able to educate me on a day-to-day basis on which direction do I need to go on based on the numbers. And ultimately, they should be saving my own sanity. Okay. Because I don't want to go crazy. And a lot of foreign investors go crazy because they just don't understand the explanations and the numbers, and they're not getting the right details back. Currently, I'm talking to a potential client who's using a very local CPA firm to do their outsourced bookkeeping and accounting work. And, she now has to consolidate those books with the head office. And there are moments where she doesn't know how to synchronize or consolidate it. And obviously she then has questions for the Chinese account, and she never gets replies. Zero. There is zero communication. All right. Now, apart from jumping on a plane and having a meeting with them, she's totally lost in terms of what to do. She should not be spending that time asking to answer my email or do this or do that. In addition to that, this accountant should be helping you to make real-time decisions, not waiting 2 months, 3 months. No, making real-time decisions. I wish I would have had somebody back in the day tell me, Christina, your headcount is way too high for the amount of revenue we have. You're totally off the ballgame here. We need to cut headcount and find another business model or another solution to help grow and scale. And last but not least, you need somebody who's going to advise you and plan for the future. Now, this was absolutely clear during the 3 years of COVID, where every single company in China had to pivot, had to figure out cash flow issues and plan for the future. Do they have to exit the market? Do they have to downsize? Do they have to cut salaries? What do they have to do to stay alive in the market? It comes from the numbers. And that's your finance team guiding you on those decisions. Okay. If I can make any recommendation to entrepreneurs, leaders in China, is invest in an excellent accountant. Again, whether it's an accountant that you are outsourcing to another company, which has its advantages and disadvantages, or hiring somebody in-house, invest in that role. Okay. And more importantly, don't just invest in that role, but actually execute on that role and implement that role so that it gives you that free time, that free energy, saves your sanity, helps you plan for the future. You need all of that, right? Now, of course, a lot of foreign investors then say to me, Christina, I don't know how, I'm interviewing accountants or I'm interviewing outsourced providers. What do I need to look at? How do I qualify for it? Okay, so this is what I look at. All right. The first thing that I do is I have my right-hand if we're building up on our team, I have my right-hand person do the first round of interviews in Chinese, and really that interview is skill set based. Okay, so by skill set based, I mean how up to date are they on tax information? We also then ask what network do they have with tax officers. We also ask what network do they have with banks, with State Administration of Foreign Exchange, potentially also Ministry of Commerce, etc. The next point that we look at, which again is skill set, is the business acumen. How have they helped their previous employers grow and scale in the market? What have they done? What business decisions have they promoted or pushed for that has led the company to scale up? The third skill set is presentation prowess, because quite frankly, I don't need to look at my full P&L every single month. What I need is somebody to summarize that P&L into extremely specific points that we're not spending hours looking at line item by line item, but we are looking at big numbers, right? We're looking at gross profit. We're looking at general administration expenses. We're looking at net profit. We're looking at tax liability. But within all of these numbers, we're also looking at budget versus actual. And in addition to that, if the numbers don't look good, why? So then it goes more in depth into specific line items, not all line items, specific line items that are causing these issues. And it's somebody who has to prepare a presentation every 2 weeks, every month, however you want it, every week, to guide on these numbers so that decisions can be made. The fourth skill set is technical abilities. So again, it's understanding how to book line items, to communicate with clients. It's understanding that technical aspect related to the finance tax world. Now, separate from that, that's skill set. I guess the second round of interviews comes down to me then related to points 5 to 8, which is looking at the emotional intelligence. All right. Somebody who is has empathy towards foreign investors coming into China. Somebody who understands the emotional frustrations that people have. Somebody who can be pushy and determined to get information. You need a mixture of things from an emotional aspect. What doesn't work for me is somebody who just sits there, is reactive, and is not conversing, but it's a very one-sided conversation. Number 6 is internal auditing capabilities. So meaning that although they might have the skill set, what I want them also to do is take a stand back and evaluate the company as a whole to make sure that the internal processes are efficient, that things are moving smoothly, and if there are any changes that have to be made, for it to be made. Okay, so it's an internal auditing of the business as a whole. The next is management and leadership strength. Are they prepared to be the bad guys? Okay. My marketing team loves to do marketing initiatives. They push for more and more and more, and every year they want to have more budget. At some point, my finance manager has to say no. They have to put their foot down and say, I'm not increasing the budget. I'm actually decreasing the budget. You guys are going to have to go back to the drawing board and evaluate what can you do with this amount of money. At some point, there has to be a bad guy. And I need my finance person to be that bad guy, to stand the ground and say, no, our ultimate goal, all of us, is to push the company and grow it. But we also have to be reasonable and stay within a budget. And the next is being proactive about gaining new skills. Again, accountants tend to be reactive. They may not be flexible enough to want to take on other roles, to learn new skills. That doesn't work for me. I need somebody who is flexible, who is willing to go far and beyond to help grow the business. I need somebody who's willing to come to me and say, Christina, I've heard of this seminar or this training program. I think it's going to help me do X, Y, and Z. And I love that proactivity. Okay. I love it. I think it's wonderful. It's furthering their education. It can only help my business. And we organize a system where we get that accomplished. Last but not least, they have to be a good to excellent communicator. Communication is fundamental. So obviously in the first round of interview, they have interviewed in Chinese. In the second round of interviews, they're interviewing in English. And we evaluate in that regard. But then we also have a third stage where we ask them to present. And this highlights point number 3, which is their presentation prowess, but also how do they communicate by presenting data and information. And we have found that a tremendous new tactic that has helped us evaluate whether people are serious about the jobs, but also if they're a good fit within our own organization. So this is what I look at. It's these 8 qualities, if you will, that I look at to qualify the accountants in China. And I just want to highlight, I mean, this is a service that we offer to our clients when they are big enough to actually have their own in-house finance team. We do this recruitment for them. Or even they might do their own recruitment and find people, but we then do a validation step where I'll come in and interview them and just see if they fit these 8 qualities that I look for. So we're validating that process. Now, some of you, well, all of you will be at different stages of your China journey. You guys might be in the startup phase of creating your company. Others might be 1-2 years running. Others might be 10 years running. Okay. I wanted to outline steps, or if you will, system processes to start that conversation with your Chinese accountant, again, whether it's outsourced or in-house, on actions, on what do they have to do. So it's kind of like a job list. All right. You're starting with my company. This is what I need you to do. One is create a budget for the China business. We're going to do this together. And we're going to set certain KPIs for our salespeople. We're going to set a marketing budget for the marketing team. I mean, you might even be smaller than that, but that's the role of this accountant, is to do this job, budget. The next is you want them to do a project on evaluating the right accounting software system or ERP system for the business. They need to talk to different providers, get quotations, and advise on what's right for them. The next is they need to implement and provide training for that software system. Now, I just want to highlight, it's not just training for your Chinese organization, it's also training for your HQ, because you want the HQ to have access to that accounting software system. Next, it's creating your charts of accounts. And like I highlighted on an earlier case study, charts of accounts in China, from a numbering perspective, are very different. From a description perspective, are pretty similar. It's just the numbering is different. It's creating that charts of accounts, mapping it out to what your HQ has, that from a consolidation perspective, it's easy to do. It's then also evaluating whether you need one set of books or do you need two sets of books. It's understanding how you are going to explain things to your head office from a Fa-Piao accounting perspective and how you might want to relate that to an accrual accounting perspective. And evaluating that, because that will affect how you operate from your trade transaction perspective, how you deal with suppliers, how you want to issue Fa-Piaos, etc. Then it's creating data analysis, all right? So in my organization, I want every single Friday to understand what my bank balance is, what my payables have been in that week, what my receivables have been in that week. And I have very few outgoing payments to overseas. It's more, what are the overseas incoming payments? Okay. Now, you create your system however you like. I do it weekly. You might want to do it bi-monthly. You might want to just do it monthly. Totally up. You might want to have it daily. It's totally up to you. But it is actually executing on that system process. Then I set up a meeting the minute I feel something is strange. For example, the bank balance. The numbers are not matching up. I do not understand at all how they've come to this number. Could also be a human error. But the minute I see it, I question it. Or a payment has been made that I never approved. What's going on there? Have we missed a step? What's happening in the approval processes? The minute that I see something strange from this weekly information, I'm immediately on the phone with my accountant or my finance manager saying, what is going on? All right. So the communication standpoint is immediate. Okay. Then you have to set a deadline for when you want financial management reports. Now, for example, we have clients that need to consolidate their books, which means they need the Chinese financial management reports by either the 3rd or the 5th of the following month. Others are more relaxed and they say, oh, just send it to me by the 15th, 16th of the following month. But you have to dictate that deadline. That deadline also has to come from the HQ, and you have to stand by that deadline. The next is you have to set up a meeting to review the reports. I have said line item by line item here because I think as a startup, that's where you should start. But once you're running the business, you should have a presentation allocated where you're reviewing the budget against the actuals. You're reviewing what targets have been achieved. And if things are not matching up, why have they not matched up? And then you need to start reforecasting, amending accordingly. Now, all of this, I say set up meetings. You might say, well, that's just common sense. Put it in the diary. Make sure that if your deadline is the 5th of every month, by the 8th of every month, everyone has reviewed it and they're going into a meeting to analyze the data. That means that presentation should be done with the bigger numbers and you're analyzing what's happening in the organization. Okay. Then you need to create an action plan of how to improve the running of the business. Okay. And by that, I mean, the finance team is always the last to find out everything. And usually it's their job then to collect documents, chase people. It's really annoying. But their job should also be to create standard operating procedures for the various departments, because usually everything ends up on their desk anyway, because payments have to be made or invoices have to be issued. So SOPs need to be created within the various departments. In addition to that, cost has to be handled. If the marketing team is spending too much money, that meeting has to happen straight away. Okay. This accountant also needs to highlight the problems that are occurring within the departments of your organization, the communication struggles. And I say within the organization, I'm referring to actually the China business itself, because people don't realize that even though you're all sitting in the same office, although many aren't anymore because it's all remote working policies, you're not sometimes all together. So there will be communication issues. That doesn't highlight then the communication issues you're still going to have with the HQ, which will happen regardless. These things have to be managed out, panned out. Another thing that has to come in is that there should be monthly strategy meetings. There should be meetings about looking at the data, and then there should be meetings separately coming in with a variety of people, maybe a smaller group, looking at growth, investment plans, product lines, new service lines, eliminating products, eliminating service lines, looking at headcount. Do people have to go? Do people have to be added? Do you need to replace? It's looking at costs. Where can we downsize to make sure that we're not overspending? Do we also have to look at new suppliers, new logistics firms? It's going into those discussions about the overall strategy of the organization and looking at it month to month. You, as a leader, have to be proactive in all of this and make sure these meetings are in the calendar and that they actually happen. Once they are happening, it actually becomes a routine. And that's what you want to achieve, is a routine with your finance team, with your outsourced provider or your in-house accountant. You are creating a routine of communication and points, and it just becomes habitual. Once it becomes habitual, you are able to react immediately. This is why having a Chinese accountant is vital and is important. Now, what I haven't touched on is where it comes so important. And this is where I see more this trend nowadays. More and more foreign investors in China are looking to add additional investors into their China business. Those investors are going to do a due diligence on your China business. They're going to want to analyze your China business. Maybe they even want to buy you out. Who knows? But you need to make sure your books are completely transparent and you are able to answer those internal auditors who are doing the due diligence on any question that pops up. I've gone through the experience of selling my old company. It's a horrible situation to be in when you can't answer something. All right. You feel terrible that you don't know your business inside and out. So make sure you have that knowledge level readily available. That's the end of today's presentation. That's basically summarizing why you should have a Chinese accountant on the ground, why it's such a vital role for your business. Love to hear, for those that are watching this live, what was your biggest takeaway from today? You can add it into the chat box. If you do have any questions, now is the time to ask them. So far, nothing has popped in, but if you do have any, type it in. Are you ready to hire your own Chinese accountant or still outsource? If you want to have advisory on that, on what is the best route for you, in the email that I'll be sending out, which will have a recording of today's presentation, you'll have a link to my diary. We can see if we can be of assistance to you or not, or if you're looking to change outsource providers, or you're just trying to maybe validate certain accountants that you're looking at, we can help you with that. Last but not least, we always move the roundtable on to our WeChat group. If you haven't joined our WeChat group, which is the Thrive in China WeChat group, message me or add me on WeChat. My ID is KNCOLUCCIA. Type in Thrive in China and I will add you into the group. And last but not least, next week's episode roundtable is going to be on how to create an internal audit process for companies operating in China. So this is about creating standard operating procedures within your organization, what kind of standard operating procedures you should have, etc. So those of you that are on here and in the community, just show up, same Zoom link next Wednesday, 1 p.m. Central European time, 7 p.m. China time. If you have colleagues or friends that you think this topic might be of interest to, please do invite them, send them the registration link. We'd be happy to have them join us. I want to thank you all for coming in. Still no questions have popped in, so I think we'll finish it there today. Thank you all for joining. I look forward to seeing you again soon. Take care and goodbye.